privilege to have Dorothy Heathcote with us at this conference. This afternoon she's going to teach a drama lesson. Her reputation has gone before her, and I'm looking forward to that lesson very much indeed. But just now, I've got one or two questions that really emerged from our discussion last night that I'd like to put to Dorothy about drama in general and about this lesson in particular. First of all, Dorothy, I just wonder about the function of drama in the school curriculum. Last night, I think implicitly there was a fair amount of comparison between, if you like, orthodox school subjects and drama that was seen by the participants, it seemed to me, as somewhat unorthodox. And yet, when I think of orthodox subjects, I think that pupils being inducted into a body of knowledge, usually by methods of inquiry and learning which are appropriate to that knowledge. So each formal bit of the curriculum has got a content, and it's got some methods of inquiry, and it's got its own tests for truth of propositions within that body of knowledge. And in this way, drama seemed to come over last night as very different from this. So what do you see is the function then of drama in the curriculum when compared to, say, biology or history?
Well, I think the whole thing's got felted up with notions of vague creativity. I think I would just say to you that for me, the medium of communication, the basic medium of communication, is the sign that somebody else can read. So you've got a piece of paper on your knee, and it's a sign to me that there's some reading on there and that you're going to be able to read it. Now, I don't distinguish then drama teaching from any other kind of teaching in that we all use the sign as our basic business. The theatre has developed the art of signing in a very special way, and that's the bit I borrow for the classroom, the art of signing. Now, you see, the theatre resonates its signing. It doesn't just say it in words. It says it because there's a combination of form, matter, colour, space, line. Now, I think that's what a classroom is. If you take trouble, that's what a classroom is. And in that sense, and that sense only, I'm not saying it for everything, that is a theatre. Now, it seems to me that a sensible teacher says, I'll do the best resonance in this lesson in the ways the signs are needed for this learning that I possibly can.
Yes, okay, well, but I understand that you're using the word sign then. So drama then becomes a bit like what we conventionally think of as English and mathematics, as a language then.
Yes,
I mean, the signs
in that sense, yes.
And it's got its own vocabulary and syntax.
Yes. However, there's one point, and you have to consider this quite carefully, and I don't mean it can't go on in what I'd call an ordinary science lesson. Drama moves into a special time and assumes that there's a no penalty zone, that we shall now deal with this matter. Not we'll think about it, or we'll talk about it somewhere over there, supposing you were going to do this experiment, but that we now are. Now, if we now are doing this experiment because I'm a teacher and you're a student, you haven't moved into the drama mode necessarily. However, if we both agree, for example, that we are professors with a certain power to demand resources, then it has moved into drama. That a child may not have the real resources around him, but that he could use a cardboard make-up of it. It wouldn't look too respectable in a real science lesson. But put that touch of drama in, and you move into another dimension for that particular study, because you've agreed to the depiction as if it were real.
Yeah, Chris used this phrase last night, as if situations. But what you've said, you see, reminds me very much of what goes on in the minds of scientists who would not claim to be perpetrating dramatic acts.
Right.
I can imagine a hypothesis which might be testable given certain conditions, but those conditions might never exist. So am I then doing drama?
Yes, I see what you mean. Well, it seems to me in the way I'm talking about it, you are, because you're identifying in your mind at that moment. You didn't bring it out to manifest it into behaviour. And if you do carry it into a manifestation of behaviour, and everybody knows you're now producing a hypothesis and filling it out as if the hypothesis is now available to everybody to read, I would say that it has become the dramatic form, because that is what the actor is there to do. He's there to interpret this in a way that others may perceive and become engaged with it.
So I would have it right, this will be a partial picture, but the essence, therefore, or one of the essences of drama, is that actors translate into actions, words, sounds,
They form,
gestures.
yeah.
They are communicating pictures they've built up in their minds.
Obviously they must, but there's another addition which may not be present in quite the same way in drama as in other situations, the element of tension in learning. Now, we know that the most tense and exciting classrooms are nearly always where children are in direct contact with objects that can surprise them, frogs' legs. There's a tremendous tension in labs. I mean, one adores it, it's tremendous. Now, the teacher can produce tension through drama that can get into an area that is better without the lab. Let me give you an example. Here's a lad, he can't use a chisel very well. Okay. In woodwork, there's a natural tension coming between himself, the chisel, the wood, and so on, and what he wants to do with it. That I approve of. However, I might want to get into an area with him about the nature of wood. Now, while he's struggling with his chisel and his wood and not cutting his thumbs off, the nature of wood has to take second place. Slowly over the years he can come to that. But if I want to speed that up a little bit, just to say, you know, there's woods and woods, you know, there's not just chisels and woods, there's woods and woods. I can set up a situation that relieves him of the chisel pressure and gives him that sort of chisel where he'll be perfect. His chisel will be perfect. And then we might get into another area of the nature of wood. So if I say, she always wanted a pie and coffee, you know, and I don't really like this oak. I know you're insisting on oak, and I know all the people want oak, but, you know, she wanted pine. Now we're in another dimension, it seems to me, that the real laboratory cannot achieve because the lad cannot achieve.
Yes, that's right. So you're taking really the limitations, physical and other limitations, so they can be infinitely skillful.
Yes.
And infinitely well-resourced.
Yes. And don't you think kids need it? That sense that sometimes they are infinitely skillful.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they might get plastic coffins. That would happen when you were going through your pine and you would. It reminded me of, who was that? Like Beryl Reid. You remember that lovely, that wretched schoolgirl? You know, the one, that joke about the television, it comes up, it was mahogany, that's right. If you polish it, it comes up just like plastic. However, in a way, you're following on some of the trains of thought that occurred in our discussions last night. But there's something a bit dissonant between what you're saying now and the outsider's view. I think it's an outsider's view, a more orthodox view of drama. To me, drama is essentially authors who write plays and actors who act these plays, and they're produced and directed by people who are skilled in getting the best out of the actors. And this, after all, it has been a way of thinking about and conducting drama from, I suppose, the ancient Greeks onwards. And there seems to be some degree of distance between drama as the acting out of plays written by authors, me doing my Shakespearean bit and being assisted in that by somebody skilled in Shakespearean translations.
Yes, yes.
And what you're now talking about, there are one or two words that seem to me to be sort of boo words in a sense used last night, and you might help me by just describing what they might mean. There was transactions were described as negotiations between teachers and pupils, and I'm not clear in this case who is negotiating what. I was told that teachers were negotiating with pupils, but I wasn't quite sure what the outcome of the negotiations were, or whether indeed negotiations were necessary. Another boo word, or a boo phrase, was teaching strategy were described as learning to discover. And in this case, I wondered what the distinction... There were two problems I had. One was the distinction between drama and anything else, because, I mean, I think that my own kids, when I taught them biology, learnt to discover. They learnt to discover in biology using the tools of discovery of the biologist.
Yes, quite.
And I just wondered whether all drama was necessarily like that. I mean, it seems to me that learning to discover is but one set of legitimate goals in a number of subjects. And the third phrase was exploration of inner experience. And I think you got somewhere towards helping me on the last one, because when we're talking about, as you were a moment ago, about children imagining themselves to be infinitely resourced and infinitely skillful, or if you like, infinitely beautiful, or infinitely bad, or whatever, I can see that that's a sort of inner experience. I mean, in simple language, I suppose they're using their imaginations, and that imaginative exploration is assisted because you're getting rid of the constraints. But what about the others? I mean, there are really 3 points. One is the outsider's view. I mean, where have I gone wrong? Have I got to revise my view of ground? What do I mean by negotiate? And what about this learning to discover?
Yeah. What you're talking about when you talk about your actor, your playwright and so on is, you're talking about one form of the dramatic instinct, the theatre form that we've developed. But there aren't always playwrights in every culture. Their theatre forms don't always come up like ours. You have a theatre under a banyan tree. However, the drama form, if you like, there has to be a place recognised as being a no-penalty area where acts can happen, and we'll know that that person who does them is divorced from them and will not pay any tribal penalties, and so on. So you're taking just one aspect of drama. I would say that the broad aspect of drama is man's ability to identify with circumstances I can't find words for this, because if I could, we wouldn't really need the drama. You know, it's an art form that can't quite be put into words any more than you can describe a painting as it can describe itself. It seems to me it's man's ability to shift from I'm thinking about something now to I'm making it happen into me now. And it's that engages me about how you get people to learn. Is there a place for that when you say I'm making it happen into me? Now, in all the other things you've mentioned, you can do it without drama because the biologist has got frog's legs. But drama, the actor has his body, and that's it. His body in a place acknowledged to be no penalty. So he hasn't got an outside agent to engage him. He has to engage with himself and meet other people, of course, in that same area of time that we'll trust one another. You had your funny story about the glass eye about trust. I'll trust you that if I say, I did really want to buy coffee, you know, Joe, I trust you'll answer within that same time scale. And it's like looking at the world through a manhole cover instead of flying over the territory of a map, you see. Now, I don't know whether that helps you a little bit. We haven't time to go in for much more.
It is much help as I'm going to get in this discussion
at this time. At this stage. Now, I liked your word transaction last night. In fact, I nearly swapped my word negotiation. I was thinking, now, what is the difference? But why did I not think of transaction? Because it's homely, it's straightforward, and it's got his feet on the ground, which I particularly like about teaching. The only thing I can come up with right now about negotiation is I will myself to be the servant of the quality of the transactions that go on in this room. I'm paid to teach. So I'm not only, I think I'm right here, but I'll go away and think about this for another 10 months. I'm not only transacting at the level of making sure things are working and we are hearing one another, but I've got an extra dimension in, which is how many skillful ways can I sort of manipulate a situation to negotiate it a little bit more. Now, I can't do this very well right now. I've just that feeling it's something to do with, I can't expect the kids to pay like I pay in the classroom. I'm paid to be there, and I chose to be there. They didn't. So I'll put an extra investment in that's about subtlety. And at that stage, the word negotiate suits me quite well. Transact seems to me to be how it gets into the obvious, not unsubtle, but the obvious manifested. But the negotiate seems to me the clock ticking a long way back that says, hey, I've got to get this space different. I've got to get this space different. How am I going to? And then I don't transact till I've negotiated a system here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So negotiation, I mean, the way you're using the term, it sounds to me a bit like reflection and thought as much as negotiation.
Then moves into
talk to yourself about
That's
it.
right.
Well, the transaction, I suppose that's why that's attractive to you, is because it really is a trade-off between one person and another person.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
And if I mean, we're transacting now.
That's right.
And a common form of transacting when I'm learning and you're teaching, in effect. I ask questions, and you either...
That teach me.
That's right.
That's right.
And so it is a transaction. It's a two-way exchange. That's what that means.
Of course, in a transaction too, you've got this lovely sense. I mean, a teacher who uses the word transaction shares power. The danger of the word negotiate is the teacher doesn't share the power. Because then there's the feeling of I'm the one that's doing all this round here. I'm bringing it about. And that's where negotiation, I see, could be quite a dangerous word, and that's why I'll think about it.
I think the recent history of trade union negotiations, you see what I mean? I wonder what negotiation means.
That's right, yes.
Good. Well, we've got to press on a bit, because we're getting a bit short of time.
And
I know that you were not wildly enthusiastic in the discussion we had before we started this exercise, to go through your thinking about your lesson this afternoon in the sort of straight-jacketed orthodoxy that I presented last evening, where we start off logically by considering, first of all, your intentions, and we map those out and clarify them to a point at which you can set out a manifesto of intentions, and then going through processes at strategic or tactical levels and look at the contextual constraints, and then looking at outcomes. But ultimately, I suppose, given that we are concerned with evaluation, we must ultimately be concerned with the effects and effectiveness of the lesson.
Yes.
But you wanted to start with process, so perhaps if...
I am, actually, I don't know why you think I wasn't wildly enthusiastic, because I was. I think that must have just got mixed up. What you were saying about the teacher has to know why they're doing it. Would it help you if I begin there?
Yeah, okay, it would help me. Yes.
Right. I'm assuming, I always assume this, that I'm meeting the class truly for the first time, obviously, in this case. But I always assume I'm going to teach them for the next 10 years. I see no reason why there should not be a large impact, if it's possible, that we won't forget one another. So I never do anything for one-offs. I'm just not interested in one-offs. I am interested in planting something that even if I'm not there, they might just go away and toy with, or it might make a link in 5 years or next day, you see. So I'm saying, right, they're first years, I've not seen them, and I'm going to have a long acquaintance with them in this school. So I looked for something that would join science, art and literature, because I hate this split between, well, I'm a straight, square one and she's all curvy and round, you know. So I came up with water divining as being a central point, because it's got a mythical element to it that'll get me in certain directions that might give them a language of feeling. At the same time, it's related very much with natural phenomena, that you've got to have water and it has to come somewhere and it comes off hills, you know. And there's only so much in the world. It was a revelation to me when I realised there's only so much. When my husband said, you can't make more water. There's only that much, you know. I couldn't believe that.
So long as you don't start off with the top, we're all going to make water this afternoon. You
can't do that.
I can knock it off.
So I thought that I would, with them, deliberately embark on a process whereby my intention is that they shall find no splitting dichotomy between the way people explain things through observation of very special kinds, like scientific observation, and observation at, shall we say, a more mythical level. I'm not saying more imaginative, they're both imaginative. But the idea that if you had to explain a waterfall and you only had a stone axe in your hand, what the heck would you think it was? Especially if every Monday morning it's had a rainbow around you, even though, which you get in Hawaii, for example. So that would be my intention. They're never going to see these as antithetic to each other. And I think as a drama teacher, well, I'm a children's teacher, but as a person with that thing over my head, which, you know, I feel like a whiskey bottle with a wrong label on all the time, no member of staff could turn around and say, you've made a cult. I don't want that. I want to be able to go to a geographer, as I already have done, and said, give me a good geography book that'll teach me some words about water, because I don't know them, you see. I'm not a geographer. And that's the sort of transaction I would like. So that's what I'm doing. But however, I have certain things I have to do. Because I not only have to introduce the matter of it, I want to introduce a way of thinking about it and a confidence in the child's own self to be the medium of expression. Because I think that's going to matter terribly as he goes up to his exams. Because he then does become the medium of expression. He might use a pen as well, and so on. So I want to induct certain things, but they have to be geographically and biologically correct from the very beginning. However, I don't know much, you see, in that sense. So I'm starting with, could you help me make a skyline? Because I feel watershed will centralise, bearing in mind I don't know much. Watershed I do know about. Water goes either that way or that way. So I'm going to begin with watershed. But because I'm going to write it on the board, I can hear how they think. And I can find a level from which to begin. If whatever they think watershed is, I can slowly begin to see how we start. But I want to then get into the actual rationalisation of, let's make a landscape, and let's see which way the water would flow, and let's see where it would collect, and it's going to be ours. And this has to be absolutely coherent. And I must watch out for rivers running the wrong way, for the contours, and this, that, and the other. Because I've got to do it fast. But I can't skimp it. So I'm in that funny problem. The second thing I have to do then is see if I can introduce just the business of man's impact upon the landscape. First is through how he sees it. He sees that water would be drinkable, or he walks to it and finds it and so on. So I want to invent then the names that man gives to these places. Like, we've called that hill Red Rum, you know. So we can give it a geographical name. It's a call, for example. I've learned this just this week. I've got a list. And I've got a list for the boys and girls as well. Because they may not have this vocabulary. And I want to introduce this vocabulary accurately for their own landscape, so that it's never forgotten. And therefore I have copied certain things and moved them off the big massive geography into just this. So the mixture of real words that geographers use and real words that men use, because they say, oh, that's Breast Hill, for example. A child might say that's a Breast Hill. Or Cairnpapple Hill, as I know in Scotland, because there's a sort of teat on the top. That kind of thing. And then I want to get to, how does man change the landscape? So I'm into viaducts, fountains, I don't care. I want them to create a landscape. And when they've created it, they can pick out of that landscape whether, because I've got to now introduce them to the tools, because they're going to live in this place. Do we want to be seeing that landscape as if we have only the ads? Because if we do, certain elements we've created have to come out. Can you make that kind of viaduct with this kind of tool? If you can't, and you want to live with this, and all your imagery, all your explanations, all your research tools, and all your talk, will have to go with the ads. So we took it out. And I'm going through, and again, I've used myself, and I deliberately didn't go to my husband for this. I've said, right, the ads is one, the wheel and Archimedes screw might be the next stage, the third stage might be steam, and there may be something in between, but I can't quite find it, so I'm using what I know, steam, and the fourth I'm going to call electricity. At some stage, you see, the pump came in, not the screw, the pump. And I think I'm right, but that's where I need my geographer or my engineer. I want to be able to go to staff and say, I'm stuck on this, can you get me wise on it fast? Or would you come in and teach, and so on and so on.
Dorothy,
And that's where
what
I'm
you
heading.
just described, I mean, one is thinking in terms of intentions, but it isn't a problem, but I mean, what you're describing now are really a series of strategic and tactical moves.
That's right, yes.
Which in a sense is intention to do, I intend to do this, or I intend to persuade them to do this.
Yes, yes.
but it's beginning to sound more and more like a rather interesting geography lesson.
That's right.
And so, I mean, why not leave geography lessons to the geographer?
Quite. Because my next stage, when I've laid that in, is how they will then translate from wherever we draw the landscape. It's now our world, and it's been drawn. It's only a map, like a geographer may have.
Right.
They then have to make something that I think your geographer frequently does not ask. We're going to stand in this space, and viaducts are going to emerge as we need them, and will work as if they exist. So you might be working on a viaduct, repairing a stone. There's a stone coming out there. You better get that around, otherwise it's going to be a problem. Over there, somebody might be doing something else. And we are then in a world that our real community does find rather silly. The artist doesn't. And that therefore I shall now be part of this village and will proceed to live forwards into our past history.
Yeah. This intrigues me.
And this is a difference, I think.
I worked a few years back when I was at University of Leicester with a group of historians, and we were working on actually new Mode 3 CSE examinations. And the discussion with them centred initially around their teaching objectives, and bless their hearts, but they hated the language of behavioural objectives. They wished Bloom had never existed. And working with them, there was very little communication at all initially, until I said to them, well, look, go away and just write some novel but interesting examination questions.
And then
get away from the conventions.
Yes.
And they came back with cartoons from Punch and some original documents. Now, then they were prepared to start talking about what they were teaching history for, to what end, to achieve what goals or objectives. And there, one of those, and I'm reminded of it now, was the capacity to enter imaginatively into the past.
Yes.
And they had documents like, I've forgotten whose right it was, but there's somebody went from Rugby to York along the old A1.
Yes.
And he was beset by highwaymen and so on, and he gives an account. And it's a letter from Mr. Lawrence, that's right.
Yes.
Now, the interesting thing there is that what they were thinking about is very like what you're describing.
Yes.
Am I right?
You are right.
But, I mean, one of the hoped-for outcomes in your lesson is that the pupils involved in it will, at the end of your work with them, be more able and willing to engage in imaginative reconstructions of that kind.
Yes, yes.
And I could say that was one of your intentions.
But I would say it could equally be the intention of a geographer. It's just, it's got to get manifested somehow, and it's got to move into this dramatic world, I would say. Yes.
But that would be one of the
Definitely
intentions.
so, but you mustn't forget my first intention today. And I regard it as one of the most important things for education in the secondary school. Somebody has to do something to the child to help him keep the dissonant, apparent dissonances together. And that is what I'm trying to do today. To awaken in the kid a benignness to tolerate a lot of different kinds of knowledge. And know that he's got to put them together. They won't come together naturally if he doesn't do anything about it. And that the myth of explaining how why there's a rainbow over that waterfall can be put in many languages. And one will be because our relationship with Earth is at that stage of development. And another is our relationship has now reached this stage. And this is not better than that. But they have to be different. Because we have, you can call it progress, or whatever you like. We've had more time, or we've changed our, we've got another brain that is activating the material. And the benign spectator is what I want. I don't want children saying, drama's daft, music's daft. You said it over Keats, or whoever it was.
He was.
He's daft. Well, yes, he was. Because at that stage, he was daft.
It was somebody's attempt to introduce Keats to me prematurely.
That's right, but we're doing it all the time.
Yes. So really there are two elements there then. I mean, one of them seems to me very much about conceptual organisation, which is a legitimate way of describing intentions. I mean, we tend to think of intentions as either an increase in the repertoire of cognitive skills, or we think of it in terms of attitudes, or we think of it in terms of facts gained, I suppose, body of knowledge. But it's equally proper to think of intentions as a positive intention to change somebody's conceptual map
Yes.
of an area. But there's more to it, isn't there? I think, in what you're saying. One is to elaborate their conceptual maps, to reinforce
That's
them
right.
and elaborate them.
Yes.
But the other one is to bring different conceptual maps together,
That's right.
isn't it?
Yes,
So you are
yes.
juxtaposing, for example, a scientific explanation of
And it's
rainbow
efficient.
against mythological.
Yes. Drama's efficient because you see it can switch the position in which we find ourselves. I can enter into a contract and say, look, will you agree for the moment that we all are psychologists? I said to some 8-year-olds a bit ago, will you agree we're all sociologists? And that way we can study these shells and these people. And they said yes. The fact that they thought sociologists arrange the flowers in church at the beginning doesn't alter the fact that they were being sociologists in 10 more minutes because they got the message. Now, there are certainly swift messages drama can bring, you see, because I can model behaviour, for example, in a way that they don't suddenly think I've gone mad. I can model language because I can interpret the language at the same time as I say it.
Yes.
I know the geographer can do the same. If you give himself the permission to do it a little bit more, then he gets into this dimension that I'm talking about of resonating.
Yes. When you say model language, what do you mean?
I mean, I can, you've got one language and I've got another. I can say, I think what we need, I said to a 4-year-old the other day, I think we need a contract with this prince, don't you? I don't think this prince is. He's not open to any suggestions. Will you help me make a contract? And the kid doesn't know what contract means, but says yes because she trusts me. I'm a nice looking lad and I've got a nice brochure. So we go over there and say, hey you, we want to make a contract with you. We've decided. What shall our contract be? And I'm modelling the language, and after a while he says, not another contract. I don't want any more contract. And he knows the meaning of it. For them, of course. And where have we got to?
Well, we've, I think, drawn a line under intentions now, because it's as much as we've got time
Yes.
for. And you agreed that in your description of the lesson, you've in fact
Got
dealt
my
mainly with
strategies.
process and the
Yes.
strategies.
Yes.
And we'll see the tactics
That's
at the
right,
time.
of
It
course.
will be tedious to try and describe tactics, because
Oh.
the whole purpose of observing your lesson
That's
rather
right.
carefully is that they can,
That's
our
right.
customers can map out those tactics, pick out those which they claim are significant or believe to be
Yes.
significant, and can recall them.
Yes. Also, I can break my strategies into stages, but I can't get my tactics in advance. The tactics are how the kids walk in the room.
That's the thing, no. That's right. It's the mutual response
That's right.
to which can't really be predicted. It can be observed, of course,
Yes,
and
of
reflected
course,
upon,
right.
and we can contemplate possible causal relationships
Yes.
between your tactical moves and what happened next, as well as whether your intentions were
That's
ultimately
right.
secured.
Yeah.
But we've got to finish now, Dorothy. Thanks very much indeed. Considering you're kind of a busy day, aren't you? Well, anyways, Dorothy Heathcote, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.